So if you haven't met me before, my name is Brough, and I first trained in biomagnetism in 2014. I was really, really fortunate to get to do my first course with Dr. Goyes himself before he started to wind back his teaching. And level 2 with Moises, and I did microbioenergetics with Dr. Aida over in America as well with the translations. I've also done the Codica course as well. I used that extensively for 3 years or so, but in the recent years, I've sort of moved away from it a little bit. I don't use it that often. So throughout this whole process, being an English-only speaking person and coming into this world that is very much Spanish-focused, that there was a great deal of things that are missing for English-speaking people, which is why we want to do things like this conference, is to fill some gaps and to kind of have the sort of supports that I wish I had had right at the beginning, but just weren't really there. They weren't there enough anyway. Another thing that's very, very different is my previous career was in fitness. And in fitness, I was there at the start with it. The regulation and having the registration system was put in place and was really started to come in. So I went through that, extensive sort of set of checks that you have to go through every 2 years to stay a registered practitioner. It was all about making sure everyone's standard of training was good. They provide their certificates. We get grades. There was 4 different levels to what degree you were actually trained. And everything that we did was to act as a professional modality. If you want to call it that. Fitness, you could think of it as that, as fitness is very much health related. So all that registration gave a higher standard to that world, because I don't know if you remember back 20 to 30 years back, is unregulated fitness world. It was all cowboys, that people had no formal training. It's just what they learnt from their mate, and therefore now they're a trainer. Or just because you purchased a gym, you were now the authority. It was the wild, wild west. So because I came into the industry right when it was getting full, proper regulation, for me to come into a world that doesn't have all that there, it was like, oh, that's missing. It was on my mind. It's something that I would like to see happen is biomagnetism being taken seriously, because we are being regulated. Our training is good and has some standards. Doesn't have to be identical, but a core set of standards perhaps. And the supports that practitioners would have from an organisation, such as newsletters, yearly conferences, standards of practice as well, which is more about the legalities and how we should conduct ourselves. It's a bit like the code of conduct. I do know that Dr. Goyes' website does have a code of conduct, but because things are different in each country, it may not cover all things to do with your own local area. I do know in Australia that we do have various, there may be differences state to state in terms of the laws that we have to think about and not overstep with. And so with all this missing, it's always been on my mind. I was, always looking for a little bit more proper information to flesh out what I'd learned. Some support would have been nice instead of having to develop my own brochures. And in recent years, I've been helping some other people get started with their biomagnetism practitioner journey. So that also highlighted the need for business skills, because 100% of us are self-employed if we are professional biomagnetists. So that's why I have done the biomagnetism survey, is to kind of look at what everyone else experiences. I had a hunch that most of us experience a lot of the same stuff. And new people coming into the field, if they get an idea about what other practitioners do, how they operate, what what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. You know, new people coming in can also contribute and perhaps add something and share. So yeah, just to gather all that information about practitioners around the world. And this isn't attached to a particular school, obviously, this is just me. I wanted to gather the information. Usually a training organisation would do this every year. So they would check in a year after someone has completed their training to see what they're doing for work and what's going on for them, and just gather some data, because they want to know what sort of success their graduates can have, and if they need to tweak what they're doing with their training. They may just use it for marketing to promote their school. You know, there's a lot of usefulness to this data. Now, because I'm not a statistician, this is not my area of expertise, that the way I ask questions, I realised there was a few things I could have done better, but nevertheless, the information is still useful, and I'm going to run through it with you and show you what I found. At the end, there'll be plenty of time for us to discuss the key findings and the key things that came up. But if along the way I haven't been clear and you need me to clarify something before we go into the next section, pop a question into the chat and I'll address that along the way as well. And, you know, you might want to take notes too, because you're going to have a bright idea. And, you know, we really need to talk about the bright ideas in the discussion time at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to share screen now. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about my background and why I wanted this information. I'm hoping that every year we can repeat this and perhaps do a refined version next year so it's even more useful. And over time we can see trends. But the very first time, there won't be as much. But the benefits that we have right from the get-go are mostly about new practitioners. So they'll have an idea about what other biomagnetists do, how they structure their practice, and that basic direction, and it's going to be there for them. The trends over time, like I said, well, next year compared to this year, we may see a trend emerging. So if people are moving more towards commercial premises and less from working at home, for example, might be a trend. These sorts of things can come up. And also the opportunity for innovation. So if you've completed the questionnaire, if you've completed the survey, you'll know there was 3 big open-ended questions. So the audience, you guys who are practitioners and students. So if you have a great idea or something, a skill that you bring to the field, you're going to have a chance to say something about it. And we want to feel empowered, like what we have to say matters and that our needs are getting met because we're being heard. So it's going to be great for our community. It's great for us as individuals. And we're going to go to what actually happened and what the data says. So to start with, there was a total of 67 responses. You might think this isn't very much, but it took 4 months of very hard work just to get those 67 responses. And this just highlights the difficulty of having a decentralized modality. How do we reach all the different people who've trained at different times under, different circumstances, different countries, different schools? And there's no central authority. There's no central database. I can't just send an email to everyone and say, hey, who wants to get involved and do a survey? But still, 67 gave us a lot of data, and it will be bigger next year. So there was a little bit of data cleaning needed, and this could be mostly because of the way I've actually worded the questions. It meant that some people misinterpreted them and they weren't really answering the question at all. So sometimes a piece of data in a survey comes through and it's clear that the person has not understood the question because it makes no sense. Or their spelling is they haven't made complete words and there's no way to understand what it is that they're saying. So people do make mistakes and misinterpretations do occur. So those entries get taken out. And so with every question, what I've done is put the number of responses that were taken into account next to the question. So here we are. This is where we start. Can everyone see that okay? Yeah. So how do we work as a practitioner of biomagnetism? So we have the vast majority here, self-employed sole trader, charging fees. So that's 70%. It makes sense to me. And 22.4%, a new practitioner working with volunteers and or family. So these percentages aren't super important in and of themselves, because sometimes the people who are receiving the access and actually doing these surveys, it can create a bias. So people who are new practitioners, they're more connected. They're asking questions, they're seeing this sort of thing and getting involved. The practitioner is confident, they're independent, they've been doing it 10 years, they don't like social media, that they don't read their emails, that person is not going to be exposed to it and know that it exists. So that we have to consider this sort of thing when we look at data. But if we compare all of those that are working and charging fees, being an employee of a clinic or a subcontractor is rare. There was just a single response each for those two options. And it does look like, virtually all of us are self-employed. Now, how many of us, put your hands up, knew that when you first trained in biomagnetism? I did tell you, Rosemary, yeah. But yeah, it can be a bit of a rude shock. And I've seen people in the natural therapy world put out resumes and blast themselves on social media saying, I've got this qualification and I can do this and that. And where are the jobs going? And so some people do not know that. So now, do we combine biomagnetism with any other natural therapies or any other sort of business or any other sort of job? So we've got two majority no's here. So the minority by far is the 13% saying yes, that I do biomagnetism alone. It's my only offering. There is a small minority here that have other businesses at 3% each. 14.9% of us have another job not related to biomagnetism. And there's and out of those who offer biomagnetism plus another therapy, that half will be using it alone and half will combine it within the same session. So I'm assuming that they're not going to be big things. I sometimes combine another therapy with my biomagnetism sessions because of the 10 to 15 minute rest that might be right at the end, may give me a small amount of time to do another small amount of another therapy. So I do know some of us will do a full scan and perhaps spend 10 or 15 minutes sending some Reiki. It's not a full Reiki session. And so there's multiple ways that we can combine other therapies with biomagnetism. The problem would be just the practicality of it. Can you actually make that happen? Okay, so where are we in the world? What country are you in? So 64 responses. Some of the fields came through blank. And again, people make mistakes or perhaps don't want people to know where they are. But we've got 15 from Australia were involved in the responses, 6 from Canada, a single for Germany, Greece, Japan, Portugal, New Zealand, Nigeria, and Sweden. USA, highest numbers, 28, and 6 from the UK. 2 from Mexico. Now, we all know there's far more people than this in the world that do biomagnetism, and this is just a portion. Again, the idea is to have this in place, and it's going to become more and more useful over time as we get more and more people involved, because then the statistics will actually mean something because they have more significance. A single person who from one country, if we're looking at how many people actually do it in that country, it might not really paint the picture. It's not about how many people actually are there. It's just how many people in Greece actually heard about the survey and did it. And so we can't make inferences about any of this, but we're just going to take away the key pieces of information that are plain, and we're not actually interpreting them. If that makes sense. So I'll show you what I mean here. How long have you been practicing? So the responses all varied. There was one response of less than a year, right through to 20 years. And when I averaged them out, we've got 6.1 years. So that doesn't really, an average doesn't really tell us much. But it's a ballpark, and it's something that it's all we kind of need to know as practitioners reading this. If you were a teacher, perhaps you might want to have far more detailed data, and in future years I may be able to sort of report on that, because an average can actually, you can actually end up with some unusual things happening. So if you've got lots and lots of people, say half of all people were at 1 year, and they've got half of all people were at 18 years, and you put them all together, you will end up with an average somewhere near the middle. But it doesn't tell you that there was large patches of timings that were missing. It's like, oh, wow, there was absolutely nobody who's been doing this more than 18 years. Or there was absolutely no one between 15 and 17. So that data would be missing. The more useful stuff, I've made sure it's in there. So the percentage of us that do distance biomagnetism sessions, 64 responses, and we have, very close to 2/3 and 1/3. Don't worry if these don't add up precisely to 100%. Sometimes the data cleaning is involved. So, but you get the idea, 65.7 do. We can't make inferences as to why. Why did those others not want to do, So inferences are solid information. That means that we can connect it to other information. And so don't take this data and start making inferences. It is just true for the sample that we used it for. Now, this was interesting, and it took a lot of time because doing the math is... you have to check and double check and triple check. But this is how much we're all charging for a session. And because it was a fairly open question, people could say, look, I charge $60 for a child, and I charge $30 for a pet, and I charge $90 for a repeat customer. And then you've got, the initial consultation will be $150. So some people gave varied answers. And in that case, what I did was I took the larger amount, because it's more about that first session. And we tend to spend a little bit more time with that. And so we're not actually going to be able to infer what people are charging for children. Think about this as data that is all about what an initial consultation or your first session or what your every session will be. So we've got the numbers of people that actually responded. Quite a few did not here. So 10 responded from Australia. And we do know there was 15 from Australia that completed the survey, but there is 5 that are not charging fees, and it's a family and friends therapy for them. So we've got a mean, we've got a range between the practitioners, not within the practitioner and their scale of fees within their own practice. It's between the different practitioners. We've got a mean, and I converted it to AUD and USD just because, it's probably what makes more sense to us. So quite a varied amount when you look at it. So Mexico, cost of living is probably much lower. Usually these things are a reflection of cost of living in the local place where you are. We've got no control over conversion rates and these sorts of things. And sometimes it's about the suburb or the location, that more affluent suburbs and areas, well, you're going to have higher rents and you need to charge more, and your clientele can afford to pay more. So there's no inferences about all those details. It's just raw data. But again, it's a starting point. It's something for the new people. So yeah, quite a bit of difference here. Like there's 223 here in the UK when it is converted to AUD, 276. But, you know, that's a single person. It may not be typical. But yeah, it's a starting point and it's something to work with. Distance sessions, I've repeated the same process. Everything is slightly lower for distance sessions. There was a slightly lower time spent on distance sessions as well, so that makes sense. So here's the timings. So this one wasn't terribly surprising. The however long it takes the average person, it has seemed to come through here. So an average biomagnetism session in person, 4 people answered under an hour. So some a lot under an hour. It's like, wow. 2 people answered over 2 hours. But, you know, 60 out of 66 answered between 1 and 2 hours. And yeah, the time varied. Instead of giving an actual average, you know, how long do you spend doing a session on average? Some people have actually given me a range. So one person in particular wrote 15 to 30 minutes. So I'm wondering if they're in a very close to the equator. And we've got 4 hours there. And if we all remember back to learning our level 1, we know it can take that long as a new practitioner or a student. So distance, how long we're taking for distance sessions. So 54 responses. We've got fewer people doing the distance healing, so that makes sense. 47 people answered 1 to 2 hours that same time frame. Instead of 4 people answering under 1 hour, we've got 6. And 1 person only over 2 hours. And that was the person who also said 4 hours for their distance healing as the same as their 4 hours for their in-person healing. So yeah, just if you want to think about it, it's on average, we can get through a distance healing session a little bit shorter. It's not actually true for me, but hey, it's not about me. So I was really, really curious about this one because we have our favorite way to do a biomagnetism distance session. We've all got different circumstances, what we've got access to, what we've got time for, what is practical. So personally, I do self-testing and surrogacy only because scheduling a third party to marry up with my schedule and what is going to be practical and what the client can attend. Most of my clients love actually, lying down and receiving the session. They like to be that. They don't need to be, but they do enjoy it. So for me, that would have been an absolute nightmare. Every time I need to schedule someone, I have to go to a third party to see if all 3 of us are free on the same day. And to be honest, that would probably take way too much of my time. So I mastered self-testing and surrogacy. So sometimes I sit on the massage table, swing my legs. Sometimes I use this one here with the arm length extensively. I place the magnets on myself. Self-testing is my way. So we've got 37% of us out of this. Remember, we've got 20.9% here opting out, saying they don't do them. But this is a majority, definitely. Self-testing and surrogacy. Volunteer surrogate, 16%. Other, don't know what that one is. But it's interesting. And it means that next year when I do the survey, I'm going to ask what other that is. Because what if someone has come up with, a smarter way? You never know. A paid surrogate, so 9% here out of this batch use a paid surrogate. I do like that idea. If you have access to someone who is available readily, especially last minute, and you can make it work, it's nice to pay someone for their time because it is an important service and not everyone can do it. Okay, where do you practice biomagnetism? 67 responses. This is the only question that everyone actually answered. And again, probably because it was multiple choice and it's a bit more difficult to misinterpret. So we have a vast majority here, home practitioners. again, we can't make inferences, but it makes me wonder. I wonder if this has got anything to do with the shift that has happened in the last few years because of COVID. A lot of people work at home for other reasons. But I know in Queensland, working from home as a professional has really become commonplace long before this. So I know it's not as common in other cities, but Queensland, I think we're a little more relaxed, and we all love going to see our accountant at their home office or our hairdresser at their home office. So it was already, most people actually prefer it. It's more friendly. And yet 32% in a clinic in a commercial space. And the people that pay a fee or a percentage or something to use somebody else's space is 14.9%. This was pretty high. I was pretty impressed that there's 17.9% doing home visits, because that's a lot of effort. It really can be a lot of extra effort, especially if you're taking a table with you. And then we've got 13.4, a combination of the above. And I've been in that position where I've actually done work at home, work in another clinic 1 day a week, and home visits like every second week for a single day. Like I've had that combination personally myself. And other, I don't know what that one is. Okay, so here we are with referrals. So when it comes to being a service business, that, we love referrals, and sometimes they flow easily, and other times we have to work at it. And if we're starting a practice and we've already got that network, we've already got clientele, we've already got connections in the community, and people know what we do because we do other natural therapies, then referrals is easy. But when you're starting from scratch, you've got to build yourself up first before it becomes easy. So we're looking at who gets a lot of referrals, or what percentage. So 20% nil most months, 35.8%, 1 to 3 per month, 20% 4 to 6. And as you can see, just there's smaller minorities here for the larger amounts. So again, we can't make inferences, but over time there can be patterns that show up. Okay, so this is about online presence and how we get clients through our online presence. So that's website, business, social media, anything at all like that. So 61 responses, and most of us have none. Again, we can't infer that everybody does have a website and it doesn't work very well. You can't make inferences. And again, we've got quite a lot of us who are just using this for friends and family. It's a hobby, it's a personal interest, it's not a business. So that will probably include those people. So 34% 1 to 2, and then we've got smaller minorities after that. What is the average number of sessions you deliver monthly? This is one of my key interests. I was really interested to see, how many people are doing it. Sometimes you think, wow, I couldn't possibly squeeze another one in this week. I'm just exhausted. And then other times that you think, oh yeah, this is an easy job. I see 2 a day and it's easy, and that, what do other people do? If they run ragged, do they have a nice pace that is just balanced? Or do they have a busy practice where they just have no gaps and they can fit more in? This would show what people are doing out there in terms of numbers of sessions. So it varied greatly between 2 and 100. The vast majority between 1 and 20. And smaller minorities here between 21 and 60. And it's interesting if you think about that, is somebody who's working full time in this sort of work, they may be doing, say, 40 to 80. So, these poor people here, they've obviously got very efficient and love what they do, or perhaps they need an assistant. But that's where we're at right now. Okay. So marketing. Again, we're all in such a different position with this. Do we need to market? The established people, probably not. They might just have a clinic newsletter, which is which is easy marketing because your own clients do want to open those emails. 61 responses. We've got most of us, 65%, are not doing any time on marketing. And then we've got 11% and 14% that are doing a small amount per month. So a small amount. It really is really low volume of time. Now we've got very tiny minorities. So this will probably look like a single person has voted these amounts. So when I go through the data, a single person said 35 hours, a single person said 14, 3 and 4. So, and again, we can't make inferences. That person spending 35 may be creating a website and starting things from scratch. And they might spend a few months doing that, you know, if they're doing it well and if they're putting a lot of content into it. So again, it's just where we're at with this group. Administration. So if any of you have dealt with me personally and needed me to do something or respond to you in a timely manner, you may notice that sometimes I'm responding to you immediately, and other times it's lost in the emails for a couple of days until I can get through everyone. And so administration can really block up our time a lot and keep us from doing our treatments, or we're doing so many treatments at times that we don't get to stay up to date with our administration. So this one, and sometimes I feel the crunch immensely, but, you know, as a sole trader and a single parent, that I don't have a full-time employee to be my assistant. It's kind of, a few hours a week I should be able to do myself, but some weeks it's hard. So this is really incredibly varied, as you can see here. So 13.8% said nil. And again, we're going to have some people in this who are not practicing. Small amounts per month. And then we've got, you know, if you're spending 2 hours a week on average, this is around here, 8 to 9 hours. So that's where I feel, you know, I would be most of the time. But sometimes it's well up here, especially if I'm organising a conference. So. Okay, so this is really getting more into the deeper feedback. You know, it's more heart-based stuff. It's not just data. This is, you know, what triggers my emotions? What do I find difficult? What is hard? What is hard about being a biomagnetism practitioner? Now, I want you guys to also use that chat function. If you think I've missed something, like I've got marketing administration working alone, I've got those options. I've probably missed a couple of things. So if there's something you want me to add for next year, it would be an amazing help if you could add anything you notice that would be better for next year's survey, and pop that in there. So marketing is the highest number. This one was a multiple choice, but also that we could each actually tick as many as we wanted. You know, some people who are brand new may tick nearly everything, and somebody's been around a while, they've just got 1 or 2 things that they find difficult. So anyone who knows me, I would say this one here, dealing with personalities, I would have taken that one for sure. So yeah, marketing was up there, getting established and known in my area. And again, I guess that comes down to marketing. You know, sometimes it happens spontaneously, but often it's down to us doing some deliberate marketing, networking, etc. Inconsistent income. Anyone who's self-employed will know this. Anyone who's ever owned a restaurant or does anything at all, where you're self-employed or have a business, it's got seasons, it's got fluctuations, it's got rhythms. And after a number of years, perhaps you know your rhythm and you know how things are going. But in the meantime, you can be flush one month. And it's like, yeah, life's great. And next month, it's like, oh, got to pay my tax. Oh, it's not quite enough. And there's a bit of a financial crunch. So inconsistent income can be hard. And we do have to put strategies in place around that. You might want to see a financial advisor about, bank accounts and budgeting and all those boring things. So confidence in my abilities. I think that one was really interesting because the whole point of all this is so that we can be good practitioners and have confidence and be supported. The whole point of the conference, the whole point of the survey itself. But yeah, we've got a lot of middle sort of level ones, 14, 16, 16, 14, 16, 17. A moderate amount of us may struggle with those things. The lowest number here was too many clients. And I'm really, really happy about this one too, which is only 6% ticked poor results from my work. So, we've all probably felt that at some point, especially at the beginning. But I'm glad it's not a high number. Very pleased. Okay, next section is continuing education. So in any other profession, continuing education is important. If you were an accountant, there'd be changes to laws that you have to be up to date with each year. In our community, we have a few new pairs every year, or perhaps a tweak to the way we do things. And there's always advancing our education, thinking of continuing education as in going to higher levels of education on the same topic. So we've got absolutely no one who said they had no interest, which is magnificent. I think we all understand, well, I hope we do, that it's reasonably new therapy. It's still evolving and expanding. And we know that through the teachers that we speak to and the new pairs that come through. And the way that over time that we've actually got, more things included in our training books when it comes to manuals that we get with training. Now, this one here is the lowest level of interest in continuing education. And that's the person who's just got the occasional question that they'll just ask, and that is enough to satisfy them. And that's all the support they need. So that's 25%. 20% of us would like to update or repeat qualifications. So we've got the highest percentage here is 43%. I would love to update my knowledge yearly. And that idea of a yearly sort of update, we've got reflected here as well of I want to attend yearly conferences. So it may sort of point to a bit of a rhythm that might feel good to people. Is it would be good to learn something more or just get some sort of update yearly. It was a popular selection. So 20.9%, I am using a mentor or would like one. So I've popped that in there because I do some mentoring in my practice, and I do know of a couple of other ladies in Australia who do help out new practitioners, which is amazing. And that's, it's essential to have someone with you in the early stages, at least to help a little bit. So that we do it in a fairly ad hoc way, but there is some people out there doing a little bit of mentoring. But it would be great if perhaps there was more mentors that offered it as a nice package and put it together as a program, perhaps. Okay. So these two here about success, like what sort of results do you get from your sessions? These probably needed the most cleaning, so that they had the most misinterpretation. So I ended up using 61 responses here. How many sessions do your clients need to achieve remission from chronic symptoms? So I think sometimes people gloss over and that chronic versus acute, they're two different things. So chronic symptoms, something that is persistent over time and it's not self-correcting. And acute is something temporary. It's usually infectious or an injury. And it's not something we should be spending a whole lot of time on, or so that they're vastly different in the way that we would approach them. So our data here is the vast majority of us are saying 52% that we need 3 to 4 sessions, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. 26.9% said 1 to 2 sessions, which is mind-blowing. And 25% say 5 to 6%, so 5 to 6 sessions. So within that sort of set there, we've got the majority of respondents. And then we've got smaller percentages for people taking 7, 8, 9, 10 plus. So again, this is open to interpretation, and it may not be well done, and I would like to do a little bit different next time. So actually including in a definition of what chronic means next time. And also, I think some people don't understand the concept of average, because some of the responses that came through that I had to clean, they would instead of saying an average number, which is what was asked, they said, oh, not many. You know what I mean? There was, and so, yeah, I'd like to improve these for next year. But overall, looking really promising in terms of how people are doing with it and how their clients are doing with it. Acute illnesses, what is your success rate for healing acute illnesses in 2 sessions or less? I asked that question because that's the way it would usually go. Sometimes you might need more than 2, but the usual sort of pattern of what we get told and what we get taught is, 1 or 2 sessions for something acute is usually all that's needed. And so just sort of gauging on whether or not that's happening for people. So again, I think there may be errors here. We've got 0% to 100%. So that would be, there may be one person misinterpreting somewhere at one of those extreme ends, but we will not know for sure. So we've got 1/4 saying at 50% or under. Sorry, I'm just going to turn that off. So, and then we've got 40%, say 60 to 80% are well in 2 sessions or less. And then 31% saying, 81% to 100%. So I did group those. That was an open question. People could put their own percentage down as a number, but I did group them because it would have been harder to sort of look at. Next year, I'll probably do a multiple choice instead. Okay, so this is going to show how many of us are struggling with the more difficult clients, the ones that we might have to refer on, the ones that might need something else in addition to biomagnetism, or the ones that we cannot really gauge the progress very well. And just like Angelica was talking about before in her talk about her first client, it wasn't until the person actually stops that they realize, hey, that was really helping, but I wasn't noticing it. So we're going to always have those people that perhaps don't notice things, or it's unmeasurable, or it's just a difficult case. So we've got the clients who received poor or no results. 35% of us said nil out of 54 responses. So 51% say a small percentage, 1 to 20%, 7% say 30 to 40, and 3.8% came up with 50 to 70. So as you can see, there's a huge chunk there, 20% or under of us, which is wonderful. Okay, so your preferred treatment schedule. So, it depends on who you do your training with or which year you did your training. We may have been told something different. So I remember being told that after 6 days, you can do another treatment. And then I was told another time 7 days. And then other times that I hear 7 to 14 days. But what we find works for us and what we're using, well, that's what we're looking at here. So 56% of us seem to be right on the 7 days. Under 7, we've got 10%. So 1 to 2 weeks is 8%. 14 days there's a fairly high minority there of people that like the 14-day schedule, and a small amount that go out longer, 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, your preferred treatment schedule for acute symptoms. And again, there's only 37 responses because of the misinterpretation and needing to clean many responses out of this one. Yeah, so we've got the majority are still saying 7 days. And then we've got the people coming into, the one session every 2 days, one session every 3 days, or 3 to 7 days, the more frequent sessions. And we've even got some out here as well after the 7-day mark. And again, I find that a little difficult because an acute symptom may not be there 10 days later. But again, maybe it doesn't matter because our second session can reinforce the first because we're taking care of any reservoirs or any other stragglers in terms of biomagnetic pairs that are involved as well. So maybe it works. Maybe it works for those people. So. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so here we come to the open questions, and I really like this section. So do you have any great ideas, innovation, or something that you can, help other biomagnetism practitioners with in how they operate? Being an open question, I did expect fewer responses. We only got 30. Promotion and marketing. So each one of these dot points is taken from people's responses. So some people just one quick little sentence, they've got one thing to offer. Other people, many tips. And so I've taken each person's tip. If they've given me 8 different pieces of feedback, I'll put them in the category and I've categorized them. So I'll pull that one person's feedback into the various parts. So we can make a little bit more sense on, that how much a theme gets repeated. So this isn't all one person giving me this feedback. Each dot points from a different person. Okay, so there's a little bit of inspiring stuff, a little bit of heartfelt stuff in here too. So take the uncomfortable step of going out and physically promoting yourself and meeting people and going out into the real world and show people what you do. Go out and be real and be a good teacher, learn what you do. That's just a beautiful sentiment and a beautiful piece of advice. The more we promote and network, that we can grow our business. Talk with other women business owners about the benefits of biomagnetism therapy to promote your business. I thought to myself, that's a little bit sexist. Why just women business owners? But we know how it goes is that women are more likely to be chatting to each other and sharing about something we just heard about with other people. It's what we do to a large degree. Okay, so this idea, I like the idea of having a marketing professional to generate interest about biomagnetism and educate the public, like doing mass advertising, and use a referral system for all the practitioners that are part of the system. So a referral system and someone to take over the marketing for us, so we pay them. So this comment here is the best marketing tool is referral. For each successful session, you will receive many requests of appointments. So that is a sentiment that is going to be useful to some people and completely not terribly useful to others. Because if you're in a position where you're new in town and know no one, it's like, it's a bit disheartening. It's like, well, no one's referring. What do I do? But yeah, I've been in both positions. I've had a network prior to starting, but then I've moved and had no network and starting from scratch again. So I've done both multiple times. So it depends on your own position where you are right now. Creating interviews on YouTube. I like it. Offering to treat influencers. So influencers can be just your hairdresser. They can be people in your community that just talk to a lot of people. So I don't think you have to be famous. I do like that idea, actually. Okay, so business skills. Learn how a business is operated. Don't be too nice. Learn the correct standard ways of operating a business. So I think don't be too nice is more like don't be a pushover and, if people are late all the time, don't be too nice. you aren't just a healthcare practitioner, you're a business person too. So, yeah, and we've also got this comment here, which I'm a bit excited about. This is a fellow biomagnetist who had a previous career as an accountant. And they have taught how to start your own business and actually, actually help the people in the community in the massage world. And so there are people amongst us, Angelica included, who have skills to help us with our business. Lots of comments around the theme of creating a holistic practice. So lots of people saying how well they're combining it with other things, and they've got this neat combination and it's really working for them. So I really like these. This one here is a lot of different therapies. As you can see, I'll let you guys read this, that we don't have to read everything that's on here. I'm just going to pull out some key points. This one here is a really interesting comment. So somebody who comes from the acupuncture world, I'm not sure who that would be. There's a couple, 2 or 3 of us that I know of in the community. Okay, so that the idea of all practices of medicine are valid and all are incomplete, meaning to stay open to other options, whether you do them yourself or, perhaps you integrate with other people in the firm. And a multi-pronged approach is practical a lot of the time. And again, if you don't have multiple modalities yourself, that there's still ways to integrate, still work with other practitioners. Here we are. So yeah, 2 more that were about combining biomagnetism and how well it works with their other modalities. I like this one here, passion and purpose. So the comment was simple. Remember the reason you started biomagnetism. So this is your why, which is what we were talking about in marketing as well. Research and recognition. So that we recognize this one here. So this is Brian, who spoke before. So he says, yeah, I've published this article. Fantastic. And distance sessions. So we've got 2 people giving some feedback and giving ideas about how they do distance sessions. I like this one here on the distance sessions. I always talk to them before the session, and then when they are cooking, to give them a bit of a talk about what to expect from the session. So it is actually a really good tip. At the moment, I do not do this. I talk to them afterwards, and it does take a lot of extra time. So it could be quite a clever thing if your phone was within reach and the magnets are on. Perhaps you've taken some off, but there's still another 5 minutes left. What if you're on the phone to your client? Speakerphone, hopefully. But yeah, you can just be talking them through and saying, oh, look, reminding them to drink an extra glass of water, or what to expect after a session, and just the normal run through that we get to do with people when we're in person. It's an interesting way is if you're doing surrogacy or self-surrogacy, doing it at a distance, is to use the cooking time to talk to them. Okay, so this is someone doing distance sessions in a really novel way, visualizing magnets, and they're absolutely loving the results from it. Not the traditional way, but advanced practitioners often find their own way. Spiritual, I like this one too, is that this person has their own way, their own ritual. So a ritual is just something that you do to put yourself in the right state. So praying before a session, praying to give the best session possible and for the person to get the most benefit. If you're not a person who prays, then you can use an affirmation. I have my own little ritual, which involves lighting incense and drinking a glass of water. And I don't say any words anymore, because every time I do that, that is my ritual. It puts me in the best state. So, whatever works for you, a brilliant tip. And then we've got lots of comments that were just really simple advice. They didn't want to get into it. They just wanted to give some quick advice. Practice, practice, practice. Stay humble and always ask the body. Always check for reservoirs and personal pairs. Always do a complete scan. This person here, they don't care about business skills. It's not really their thing. I just focus on healing people. Then we come to complex advice. So we've got a 6-point piece of advice here, which is actually full of good advice. I'm not knocking it at all, but it was just funny how it came together when I was organising the categories, and that we've got such different personalities. We've got plain and simple, let's get on with it, people, and just a quick, simple piece of inspirational advice. And then we've got, let's get into all the detail, and I'm going to give you all the advice I know about. So you can read this one at your leisure, guys. So we do have two more questions. So what would you like to see change for practitioners? And again, I've organised these into themes. Some of the answers could have fit into 2 different categories, but and you'll see what I mean in a moment, but it is useful enough as it is. So what would you like to see change for practitioners? Now, to be honest, me putting the examples here, it can be a little bit leading. Some people may not think of ideas and things they would like to see change outside of those that are listed. It might close off their perception to other thoughts because there is a list. Some people, it's more like, well, it's a prompt and it helps them remember what their thoughts are on the topic. So I don't know if this one can be tweaked for next year. I'll have to think about it. So we've got 49 responses. So most people, out of the 76, 67. Continuing education. So annual updates. Sorry about that. So I had that on before because of the glitches and that people were trying to contact me. Okay, so annual updates, refresher courses, yearly class for continuing education, 1 day only without the big cost and time commitment of repeating the whole class. More pure knowledge should be disseminated. We always appreciate that. Continuing education online options with update of new pairs. And the question is anyone discovering new pairs? Now, Dr. Goy's senior is gone. We can be left wondering if we're not in contact with lots of other practitioners. Continuing professional development opportunities, regular workshop and conferences where we can meet and share our experiences like this. Maybe there can be some more in the future too. Continuing education seminars, repeat. Again, they've taken that from the ideas up here. So more frequent trainings or refresher workshops in more locations in the USA. And here am I thinking how good you guys have got it over there. Updated lists of new pairs found, also continuing education seminars. So lots and lots of responses for continuing education. Training quality and consistency. So we've got one comment here who is really happy with Helena's training, and we see that quite a bit. But initially there was the person had some problems with conflicting information. It's like, well, what is right? And so, consistency of training. Training quality. Somebody just says training quality. Lifetime access to learning portal. Oh, this is a big one. This is a big piece of feedback. This person has put in their wish list for sure. I love it. Lifetime access to learning portal to review lessons and become confident in knowledge and abilities. Mentoring, more practice opportunities. Study group for question and answer. Ongoing structured learning practice for online students to become proficient and confident. A required number of hours to obtain proficiency with case studies, volunteers, and to submit treatments for discussions and questions. So this person wants to really expand what they're doing with their learning. And again, have learning on a bigger scale all round, really. And another comment of appreciation of being able to access some online training for Helena. Having assessments and case studies as part of training. So we heard from Monica before, very briefly, say that she had to create a small study to be able to do level 2. And in the past, that was the case, is that a lot of effort had to go into your own little study to actually prove and show that you've really applied the therapy in a really thorough way, and you've examined your results and you've put all that effort into it, and you've demonstrated that to your teacher. Okay, this one is really interesting. We need less unsolidified practitioners at this rate. We should strengthen the ones we already have. People are just learning this thing due to fantastic results that their tutor had with their treatment. What those tutors had forgotten is that they had good training and lots of practice in their case, and the students coming through don't have the same benefit of the same level of training and practice. So it was more about the good old days. Okay. I feel like I missed so much in my training due to the translating. I knew nothing about biomagnetism coming into it, so it made it a little hard to follow and take in all the information. One comment in Europe, training quality, that they would like to see improvement there. And then a positive one, my training was excellent. Now, this may go with the last question, but it is more a theme on its own. Mentoring and follow-on support. So we've got 2 people that have really sort of explained, how important it is to have someone after the training to give it a lot of support implementing. So this is more like, mentoring is very much like being coached by a professional who's already done it. And so you can bounce everything off them. You can bounce your cases off them. You can look at what needs improving, what you need to expand your knowledge on, because someone can help you identify that. Teaching is just taking the information. That's how you apply it. That's the coaching. And mentoring is probably a lot more like coaching compared to teaching. This one's interesting. I would love to have someone to ask questions on a regular basis. Having a difficult client or a chronic client that you feel you can't help, and having a place to go for help. Monthly Zoom meetings, talking to others, or something. Asking the right questions was hard for me. Once I learned that, it all changed, but I had to learn that on my own. And again, some of these are make me a bit emotional, because it is when you're left wanting after a training. It sucks. It's not good. So 2 of my Lyme clients just finished training with Dr. Garcia, and so now there are 3 of us practicing in one location, and I hope to be able to help them in the way I was left to help myself. So, yeah. So that's wonderful. That's another practitioner stepping up to mentor. Okay, so public image and impression. So I think this is all about what people think of what we do. How do we present it to people? What impression do we give? It's a natural therapy, and to be honest, people think, it's new and unproven, but they haven't had enough exposure to it. Or is it the impression we give them? The fact that we don't have a hell of a lot of research, and what we have is very, very early research. Our explanations and understanding of how it works can have gaps in it too. And if we're not explaining it to people properly, then they're not going to have confidence in what we do. More people understanding. I've been doing this for nearly 10 years now, and most of those 10 years I've spent telling people what biomagnetism is, because they don't know what it is. They don't know how it works. And so I very quickly had to become reasonably good at explaining it in a way that they can understand it, and they are not getting the impression that it's a dodgy thing, that they feel it might be a reasonably valid therapy to do. And it's been I actually just recently had one client who had a single session and didn't want to come anymore because he thought it was rubbish. Now, that hadn't happened for 8 years. So at the start, I had a little bit of that, and it's probably from my own doubt being projected as a newer practitioner. In some cases, it might have come through. But for the most part, it doesn't happen after a while. If you explain what you do well, and this was someone who has a bias because he used to be, he did not accept the fact that what I was doing with the leg moving wasn't the same kinesiology that he thinks is debunked. He's an ex-kinesiology teacher. And he moved away from it because he thought it was inaccurate. So he came in with a bias, and I did not know that coming into it. And he kept asking me questions about it. I said, oh yeah, it's a bit like kinesiology, but it's not exactly the same. I said, it shows me where the imbalances are. But it's a different part of the brain that processes it. It's a bit different, but it's somewhat like that. But it's, we have our own version of that, and it's the leg shortening phenomenon. And so even though I was very clear that it was a different version, again, he had a bias. But yeah, it's a difficult thing, and we have to spend a lot of time winning over people. Ideas with marketing and help with marketing, more exposure. So exposure means it's not just us telling people, hey, I'm a practitioner, I'm going to do this thing. Are there leaders in our field who go on TV and tell people about it, get some sort of publicity? Is there, are there programs running to actually increase exposure? And there's nothing like that. Would be nice if some of that was taken off us as individuals. Yeah. So this one here is interesting, a community that is taken seriously, physician-backed support and continued learning. So I guess our image can be improved if we all have higher standards of continual education requirements. If we have an organisation that ticks the box and says, yep, you've done your extra education, you've been assessed and you are competent, if we had that behind us, that would really help. And this sort of sums it up. This person would like to see propagation of the science part of biomagnetism, not the spiritual part. We all know about unseen forces. We know about light and information and DNA and, mirror neurons and all these things, but it doesn't land with a lot of people. The hard facts are we like Brian's study of these people did this therapy and it worked. The hard facts is more easily accepted by more people. Organizational structure. So here we go. So this comment here sums it up. Organizational structure. Who are we all following? If you're a massage therapist and you've done your certification in Swedish massage, there is a Swedish massage standard of teaching, and there is an organization, and they're quite strict. And my very first natural therapy was in Swedish massage. That's why I'm using that one as an example. And so I didn't have access to the Swedish Massage Association because my teacher was not recognized by them, mostly because he didn't want to pay their exorbitant fees, not because he wasn't highly qualified to teach it. But the AMA, the Massage Therapy Association, so the New South Wales Massage Therapy Association at the time, they accepted his certificate. He had multiple degrees and a doctorate. He was, and he worked in exercise science, and he was highly qualified and had adequate background to teach a course in massage. But again, there was this, it's an example of how strict some of these organisations can be. Not to say we want that going on. We want to have alignment. We want to have a great organisation with no confusion. Okay, access to information within the community. Less claim to proprietary information. And again, example from somebody else's world, another natural therapy or another world where they have a really good system going, is basically everyone's sharing ideas openly and not keeping their own ideas in their own pairs and their own discoveries in their own best way to themselves. So if the leaders in our community had, hey, let's get together and let's all enhance biomagnetism as a whole and work together, it's very much synergistic, and more can be achieved when there's more sharing. So absolutely, I absolutely mirror that idea. Okay, too much division now that Dr. Goyes has passed. There's no governing board to keep the standards pure, and it takes away from good practice and sometimes moves into woo-woo status. So yeah, and it's, again, if we had a good standard, or at least a good base that everybody is sticking to or utilizing, then it's going to be great for everyone. The lack of confusion, we're going to be seen more seriously. Okay, governing body of biomagnetic therapists, a professional organisation which provides liability insurance, education, directories of therapists, etc. And again, this is what exists already in other therapies. And it's so easy to model. You could look at lots of different therapies in your country and see which professional organisation seems well, keeps costs reasonable and actually provides something really valuable and keeps the standards there for everyone. So there was a great deal of interest around this. Okay, it's another way to say it, which is, firstly, I'd love for all trainers of biomagnetism to contact one another. I know how difficult this would be, but if steps are taken, it can be achieved. And with the whole intention of creating a solid body. So this is a good brain dump that somebody's put out there, and it might seem a bit pie in the sky since nobody's connected and only a few people are working together. But wouldn't it be amazing if they could? And the comment that goes with it is many of them are just pushing out practitioners without solid foundation. Aligning with other practitioners and tutors is the first step. Who is our leader? There's that question again. Probably start with standardized textbooks, more things in English, getting the point names correct. Because, in anatomy, you can have 2, sometimes even 3 words for each point. And neither of them are wrong. It's just one point.
Hi, Lisa, you're back.
Hey.
Thank you.
Yeah, our internet is, we
were just making fun.
We can't control this part.
Okay, so continue.
But we're back. Then. So my talk was almost finished. So the last part was community and belonging. So we were just talking about publications. Lots of people wanting publications. But also there was lots of people wanting more interaction, networking, and a better community. So they wanted more community. And then we've got 4 people saying all of the above. Now, the entire report, so I've written it up in a nice readable way. So you actually saw it here today. It's about 17 pages, so it's going to be included in the conference PDF. So, but if anyone wants a copy of the report separately emailed to them, just let me know. Even people that aren't part of the conference today, that I will send this around and people can use it and they might find it useful. The last section I won't go through because there's 39 responses that are, a lot of them are heartfelt and they're just wonderful and they're just full of encouragement and they say amazing things about their love for biomagnetism. So you can read through these at your leisure. And that was the question. Anything else you'd like to mention about your experience as a student and practitioner? So honestly, 39 really lovely responses. So a lot of us really love what we do. Really, really pleased with that section. But again, it would be too time consuming to go through it all. So any questions or anything you'd like me to include next time?
Lisa, I already wrote something that probably you can include next time.
Yes.
And is because in my case, for example, as I do a lot of distance therapy, I need a lot of time to do the report because it takes more time to me to report to a person when I do the distance therapy than when I have the person here, because when the person is here, I just read all what I found. But when I have to sit down after the therapy and write everything and explain. So I wrote something for you if you want to. No, I cannot find it, but it was something about how much time do you take writing reports for distance therapy? Something like that.
Yeah, I do find the same thing, that it does take a lot of extra time, especially if you've got an inquisitive client and they're newer and they don't know what to expect. And there's so many follow-up questions.
Yeah.
They say, what did you find? And then you explain it in a way that doesn't diagnose, and then they're not happy and they ask more questions. And you're saying it's not diagnostic. And I'll send them a photo. These are the body parts that needed magnets today.
Yeah.
And you had 3 for nervous system, and you had 3 for digestion, and you had a couple for your hormonal system. And I try to explain it that way to them. But often people are inquisitive and they take a lot of your time, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And they might have follow-up questions that are more around health coaching, like, should I change my diet? And yeah. And it's easier, or less time consuming in person.
Yeah.
I agree, totally.
Yeah.
Well, I found